What's up, y'all? Welcome back. Welcome back. I got more book reviews. Let's get into it. Okay. The first book is an example of a book that can have everything perfect on paper. It can check off all the boxes. I'm talking things on point, writing nice, prose good, dialogue written well, characters dynamic, plot interesting. Like you would think that this is literally checks off all the things on my list of if I would like a book or not. Like it really does. The takeaway message, amazing. And somehow, like I can't put my finger on it. Somehow it's not overly great to me. It was just an okay read, and I feel like I'm definitely in a minority. On paper, this book would have checked every single box I had for me to just know I was going to get wrapped up and it would be like one of my favorite books of the year. But I read it and it was just okay. It was just okay, y'all. Not bad, but it was just okay. And I was expecting based on everything I knew about it. And even after I read it, I'm like, dang, like so much of it was brilliant. But to me, it just was okay. That's The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. It was just okay to me. And I know I'm in a minority. I know. I should love this book based on the type of books that I like, based on what I knew about this book. Even like while I was reading it, I was like, oh, that was clever. Like that was witty. Like it's a social criticism. It's commentary on like so many different things. It has a great takeaway message. Like the characters, cool. It's complex. But something just like, I don't know. It definitely wasn't in my top classics that I've read. It wasn't a bad book. I just was expecting to absolutely love it. And it was just okay. If you don't know, this book is about the main character whose name is Dorian Gray. He is waiting to get a portrait painted and he gets like mad at this picture because he's like, man, how can this thing like stay beautiful forever? And I'm gonna get old and raggedy and crusty. And this thing is beautiful. I wish it could be the other way around. He got his friend talking in his ear, spewing all kind of nonsense. He's got this like lustful greed. Like he got his own issues, internal flaws, okay, his own sins. And you just get to see how this picture, this portrait takes on that ugliness, takes on that sin, takes on his wrongdoings. And it's almost like a visual representation of that while Dorian Gray gets to look as beautiful as he always wanted to look forever. There's a twist at the end, one you might see coming and you might have already known if you heard of the book, but that's all good and dandy. Dialogue, amazing. It has like a really great soliloquy in here. It has just a lot of good stuff. The theme, great. Like I don't know what it is. I was reading it. I actually marked this spot. I got the chapter 6. And I was just like, I can appreciate and understand the literary like status of this book. I can understand why people like this book. I can understand it. It was just okay to me. I don't know. I'm actually disappointed because I wanted to love it, but it was just okay. So that's the first book I read. The back says, how sad it is I shall grow old and horrible and dreadful, but this picture always will remain young. This, it's a lot of commentary on the human condition, on sin, on ugliness, on how you treat people, on what's valued in society. It's a criticism on a lot of things as well. Like I said, it's witty, it's satirical. It actually is very quotable. Like that's one thing I recently read Catch 22 by Joseph Heller, and I thought that book was super quotable. This book is also super quotable, but it's just, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just not the book for me, but it was okay. I didn't hate it. I actually was enjoying it enough to actually finish it, but it just wasn't like, I thought I was going to be wrapped up, tucked into a blanket, sat until this book was over. And I was just like, I can low key take it or leave it. Like, it was good ish. I can appreciate it. And sometimes that's the joy of reading books too, to be able to appreciate what it offers, how it got to its place, how it was cemented in the literary world. I can appreciate that portion, but I don't know. Yeah, so yeah, this is a book that talks about vanity, identity, morality, how you treat others, internal sin versus what you see externally, how that looks like in society. It critiques society and individuals that place certain beauty standards over internal and moral standards. So yeah, there's that. Dorian was a very developed character. Even his friends in the book were very developed. Again, it checked all the boxes. It's just something just didn't like add up for me. But yeah, that's that. That's book one. My camera looks so weird today. I feel like the way it's like focusing is weird. Anyways, let's move on. It's the first book. Next. Okay, I just said that book didn't quite land for me. This next one, it landed. It did its thing. It did everything it said it was going to do. That's Heavy, an American memoir by Kiese Layman. This landed for me. This was a memoir that I was engulfed by. Like, it was so interesting to hear things from his perspective. He's a Black man from the South, and he's dealing with heaviness in many senses of the word. This book talks about his battle with his weight, his battle with addiction, his battle with identity, his issues with his family members. He encountered abuse. He witnessed abuse. Just so much. It's like I can appreciate the memoir aspect where it definitely talked about the things he was struggling with and the pain associated with it, the stigma attached to it. And also the other side where it was like a celebration of words, a celebration of writing, how that was harmful in some ways, but also a coping mechanism and an escape in other ways. And you kind of get to see how everything just collides. It all comes together. And while so many pieces of this book was heartbreaking, there was a beauty to it. I feel like an underlying beauty where it wasn't, you get to hear from the perspective of this Black, starting off, he's grown when he writes it. It's like he's writing this book to his mother, but you get to see him from adolescence up until he's grown and, teaching. And it's just, it's deep. Like, it's very deep, well written, it's poetic. Yeah, I like the concept of it being written to his mom. When he talks about his battle with food or his relationship with food, how he abuses it at times, how he withholds from times, how he views his body in general, and it's like obsession at times with his weight, with what comes in, goes out, how it's seen and presented, how it affects how he feels. It reminded me, because he talked about how it was almost like this way to control certain situations, especially to be able to affect his mother, which that relationship is very interesting and nuanced. But with this book, it reminded me of another book that I read years ago called Not All Black Girls Know How to Eat. And it's the story of this Black woman who experienced bulimia. She was struggling with bulimia. And she talked about how she would, at first, she used like this, her relationship with food as resistance. How she would she knew that was one thing that could trigger her mom. That was one thing that she had control over because she was poor. And food was just this thing that everybody was working hard to put food on the table. And that was one area where she just felt like she can control, she can get the rise from her mom. And she also felt like a sense of power. There was a piece in this book where he talked about how he used his weight at one time to kind of get a rise out of his mom, how he knew what to say at certain times. And I just thought that was interesting to see that from a male perspective as well. This book is very vulnerable. It's very open. This is a book that I would gift a black man. It was very good. I would gift it to a black woman too, but I would really gift this to a black man. Very eye-opening. His relationship with his mom is traumatic in a lot of ways. He has a deep respect and love for his mom in a lot of ways, unresolved issues with her in a lot of ways. And I just feel like this dance between like showing out and outrage and then coping, kind of withdrawing and then reaching out, and just a cycle of trauma and a cycle of addiction. I just feel like so many people can relate to that. And he was just so open about it. I appreciated that in a lot of ways. Like the lies and this like back and forth between wanting and desperation and everything that comes along with that, like wanting love, wanting to be touched, wanting affection. But things are happening to you also in your life that you don't quite understand. And it's all kind of connected, but not connected in the same way. And you feel alone. You know what I mean? I just feel like so many people can relate to that. Healing is definitely a journey. It is a journey, and oftentimes it's not linear. And this book did a good job of highlighting that. And when you look at your life, you can see that too. Like it's heavy, you know? This book was heavy. Life can be heavy. Relationships with people in your family can be heavy. Another thing I really liked about this book, and then I move on to the next one, is it really highlighted the nuance of being raised by imperfect people. Like he talked about his grandma and his mama. Like, yes, they had bad traits. He experienced a lot of hurt in the hands of his mom. But then you think about there's this other side too, where you depended on them for something, and some of your good traits came from them, just like your bad traits, and how as adults, you look back at how you were raised and you can see the influence, good and bad. You know what I mean? And it's just like, it's so relatable, but also it's so eye-opening too. So this was a really good book. This was great. And I've had this for years. That's the crazy thing. Yeah, I've had this for years, and I'm just getting to it. It was great. Great. Next. What am I going to do next? Okay. The next book I'm going to review is The Color of Law, A Forgotten History of How Our Government Segregated America by Richard Rothstein. This book is about housing discrimination, specifically by government policies. Earlier this year, I read a book called Race for Profit, which talked about like racial segregation in real estate, in housing practices, and government policy as well. Where this book differs from Race for Profit is this one really highlights the fact that there should be a constitutional or a government remedy. That's where this book really differed from that other book, because at first I was like, dang, I kind of just read a book about housing discrimination. But this, it took a different angle, which I appreciated. Very interesting. I feel like if I was to recommend a book, this or Race for Profit, I probably would recommend Race for Profit before this one, but I still enjoyed it and appreciated it. It's always eye-opening for me it's sobering for me to remember just how much the government has done to keep people down, to keep things segregated, to take advantage of the people when they already down, to really pad their pockets. Like it never ceases to amaze me. So reading books like this, it's just another reminder for me to not forget just how prejudiced things are. Tax exemptions, redlining, racial zoning, subsidies given, like discrimination within policies. This book directly talks about how there should be a constitutional remedy and talked about essentially how this was unconstitutional. So yeah, good book. I kind of been chipping away at this for some months. I just finished it though. I wanted to make sure I finished it before the end of the year. Okay, next book. This book was a reread, okay? I first read this book. Let me get it. Hold on. Okay. I first read this book when I was a junior in high school, and I enjoyed it. It wasn't this copy. I had another copy at the time. I enjoyed it, but I remember feeling like, I don't know, like I enjoyed it, but I really, like I gave it away immediately. I don't know why I did that, but I read it and then I literally gave it away to somebody else. I didn't want to keep it. I just felt like, I don't really know how I felt at that time. I was wilding in high school. Anyways, I just recently reread it. That is I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. Let me see if I can make sure I can get it. Yes, this is basically an autobiography of the life of Maya Angelou. It's heavy, it's vulnerable, it's open. Check the trigger warnings, because there's some graphic things kind of described in detail in here when she talks about her life, her as a child, her brother, other people in her community. This book, I wish I can like vividly remember what I thought about this when I read it in high school. I don't exactly remember how I felt, but I knew I was like, I don't want to keep this. And I kind of gave it away. And now I can't imagine like giving this copy away. But again, it's Maya Angelou. She talks about her life, her upbringing, her family, her struggles, how she overcame. We're talking about resilience. I actually think, did Oprah say this was her favorite book? If she did, and I know she used to talk about this book a lot, somehow I'm remembering that she said that was her favorite book. I'm going to have to look that up. But anyways, it is like heavy in a lot of places. It is. But it also reminds me, like, I know people go through a lot. I mean, everybody goes through something. But it just reminds me of like how something so impactful and beautiful can come out of a person who experienced such hardships, who never asked for that, like as a child, you know what I mean? And it's always heartbreaking to read, but it's also very human to read because it's an experience that's experienced by many, you know? So yeah, I really do wish I can go back and remember what I thought about that. I don't know. But yeah, glad to reread it. What made me reread this? I don't know. I was just kind of browsing my shelves and thinking like, what do I want to read? And it just popped out to me. I have another Maya Angelou book I was going to read instead that I've never read. And instead, I picked this up just because I felt like it was calling to me at that time. And so yeah, that's what I read. It was good. Heartbreaking, but good. Okay, the last book of this video. This book right here. Initially, I went into this book and I said, I am not going to judge. I'm going to reserve my judgment, keep an open mind, and learn a thing or two. I said I will not judge. That's what I said before I even opened the book. And I immediately started judging. But wait, hold on. I caught myself and I said, girl, you said you weren't going to judge. And then I stopped and then I immediately started. And I just kept going back and forth between I'm not going to judge. Okay, I am. And I'm just being honest because that was just my reading experience. Let me say what I did like about this. First, let me tell you what it's about. The Prisoner's Wife. This woman started volunteering at a prison in New York. She started volunteering at a prison, and she gained a friendship. She formed a friendship with an inmate. At this time, he had already been locked up 10 years. He was in there for murder. And then they started dating. Then they got married. And it's a whole lot with that. At the time, though, when she first was volunteering, she was already married. Then that kind of didn't work. They got divorced. And she started dating Rashid, who is the prisoner. And yeah, it's the journey of her falling in love, meeting him, falling in love, pushing back against stereotypes, talking about her experiences, visiting him and loving him and what he did and how it's so different and all that. That's all fine and dandy. She is a poet, and this book kind of reads like that. I appreciated this book for what it was. Let me say what I did like. I liked the fact that she was open. She said there was no shame because where there's shame, it feels like it's wrong. And she is not sorry for falling in love with her man. And she ain't shamed. And I like that she framed it like that. Like, look, I'm not trying to convince y'all what I'm doing is right for y'all. I'm just telling my story. And I appreciated that. I like that. I like that she talked about her process in falling in love with Rashid. Very interested to hear about that. Okay, then let me tell you what I was judging on. Let me just be honest. When she was talking about this man, how he was just sweeping her off her feet, how he was like showing her intimacy and love she never felt before. I'm reading the things that this man is saying to her. And to me, it's like red flag, red flag, red flag, red flag. And to her, it's like, oh, he's so open. He loves me. And it worked for them. And that's what I want to talk about here. This is her story. It don't have to work for me. And I'm well aware this is not my story and it don't have to work for me. It's her love story, her life, and it worked for her. Right. That's what that is. It's not about me. Another thing I want to talk about with this. I spent quite a bit of time at prisons and jails with adults and children, okay? In my former years. And as my actual job at times, volunteering, a lot of things in there, visiting, people. I've been through my fair share of security rundowns, okay? And I've extensive time with inmates and stuff like that. Again, of all ages, okay? I'm sitting here thinking like, she mentions in this book how there was she had like this certain amount of insecurity at this time, and she was like kind of desperate for love at this time. And I'm thinking like, first of all, I thank God that I've like, everybody got their insecurities, but that I've never like really, really wanted to seek love in that way. Thankfully, I found that with my husband, but she was married, but she didn't feel that way with her husband. But yeah, anyways. And then also I'm thinking like, maybe I'm really not that trusting, because I'm thinking about what's going through my head when I'm like in these spaces. I'm locked up with y'all at this point. It really does feel like you in there. They locking the doors behind you. You locked up at this point. And I'm just thinking like, what's going through my head? What was going through my head in real time is so far off from what she said was going through her head. And I was just like, first of all, thank you. Second of all, I realized I am very not trusting at first. And then like, especially in certain settings, and it's not just because it was prison or jail or like a youth detention center. It's not just that reason. In most settings, I'm like feeling it out. And I'm like, I don't know y'all, regardless of who you are, like anybody, you know what I mean? So I'm just thinking like, how hard it would have been for me to form a genuine friendship with somebody in that space just because one, from y'all, I done been in some situations, and I don't know. And then when I first started working in that setting, you had to go through like this was back in the 90s. But now you got to go through so many like different trainings and sit through all of this stuff when it talks about like why you shouldn't form relationships with the people that you in there helping. And they give so many like different cases and different scenarios of things that have actually happened like in that jail or in that prison from people coming in and like falling in love with inmates. And I remember sitting there like, this can't happen that much for us to spend like 2 days talking about this. Oh, it does. It does. But that's neither here nor there. One thing she did mention in this book, though, she talked about the treatment of Rashid and his like fellow prisoners. And I can definitely agree with some of that, like for sure. There is reform that's needed. There's change that's needed there. So I did agree with some of that. Some of it I didn't agree with because it was just kind of like this sense of almost entitlement and like it had almost an immature take on security in prison. So that I was just kind of like, be so for real. But other than that, I did agree on a lot of like the prison reform kind of thoughts that she had. So yeah. Before I finish talking about this book, one thing I can say though is her story didn't have to make sense for me. Like I appreciated it for what it was from a literary standpoint. Like I said, the book composition itself wasn't that great. There was some errors in there, but the story was real. The story was raw. It was important to read for me. And then I said, I can respect her like her like sureness with Rashid because there's nobody that could have talked me out of getting married to my husband. There was nobody that could have talked me out of it. And people did try. There was nobody that could do that. I was so sure I was going to marry that man. That was my soulmate. He was mine. We was going to do this thing. I was in love. And there was nobody that could have, no kind of reason or logic that could have stopped me from jumping head first in with that man. And so I'm like, do your thing, girl. When you know. Hey, who am I? She married a prisoner. I got married at 19 and nobody could have told me not to do it. I was in love. That was the love of my life and my life was this big. I was 19 and I just knew that was like my soulmate and he is. There's nobody could have talked me out of it. So I can't even be like, who am I? Girl, do your thing. But to me, I was like, whew, red flag, red flag, red flag, red flag, red flag. Girl. And she was just eating it up. But your love story is for you. It only has to make sense for you. I do suggest that you're safe. That you think about your safety. For sure. But your love story is for you. And everybody got a different one. Everybody got a different path. They don't have to make sense to other people. I enjoyed this read. Okay, so that's it, y'all. I'm going to head out. Let me know if you read any of these, if you want to. And I'm going to see y'all on the next one.